Let's talk divination. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty. This is the gospel truth. And let's look into the gospel truth about divination. There's a lot of talk about divination. There's a lot of divination going on. I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. I think that there could be some deeper understanding of what's going on. But I mean, I'm a guy that just spent the day making divining rods, which, as it turns out, is not as easy as I thought it was. It's work. So I hope you'll be patient, but I am making them. We are in production. And tonight I'll come back and show you some of the ones that I've done. And these are good rods. They're not gonna give you false positives. They're good, honest readers. And you know, I tune them up and I get them just right. So it takes a little bit of time, but divination is one of those things. I mean, I was watching, I think it was Rex Bear's show, Leak Project, and he had a Holly on there. Holly. He had Heidi on there. Heidi Vandenberg. And in the chat room, you got people saying she's a witch, burner, sorcerer. It's just crazy. Why are these people even listening to Leak Project if they believe those things? Because Rex is far from Christian as far as his presentation goes. So I didn't really get it. And people are just plain crazy. There's no other way to put it. So I thought it'd be a good idea to come on and talk about divination and to give you the gospel truth about divination. And let's see what we can learn and what we can see and what we can find about divination. This is the gospel truth about divination. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty. And let's have a look at what the scripture says about divination, shall we? So we're going to take a look at, this is a King James Version.org, bless God. And I thought it was as good a place as any to start talking about divination. The King James Bible, bless God. King James Bible, bless God online.org. And this is talking about Bible verses about divination. So let's go ahead and do the ones from the Old Testament to the New Testament. So the first verse about divination in the Bible comes in Deuteronomy 18:9. And let's read the whole verse. So when you are come into the land that the Lord your God gives you, thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. Now keep this in perspective. When you come into the land that the Lord your God gives you, and how did the Lord your God give it to you? He gave it to you. It was already somebody else's land. And the Lord used these people to go in there and kill all the other people. You know, the Lord very rarely got his own hands dirty. He had people do it for him. He was like Charles Manson. He didn't have the guts to do his own wet work, but he had his nation do his wet work. So he sends these people in here to kill these other people who were already living there, which I have a problem with. And then he says, don't do the things that they were doing. Why do you think that he had his people kill those people? Maybe because they were doing things that weren't worshiping him, and he wants everybody to worship him. So he's saying, look, don't do what those guys were doing. He calls them abominations. They were the very reasons why the Lord, Yahweh, Yaldabaoth, Marduk, Jehovah, rat bastard. And the rat bastard, because he doesn't have a father, he was created without a father. And the bastardly things he does qualifies him for that moniker. So the things that they were doing that he didn't like them doing, he called abominations. And he wanted to kill those people that were doing those things. Why? Because maybe those things were helping people learn about who and what he was. And what he said about this was, don't sacrifice your child in the fire. Only do that to me. And I've shown you without any doubt that the Lord did accept human sacrifice. Or one that uses divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, charmer, consulter of familiar spirits, wizard, necromancer. For those that do these things are an abomination to the Lord. Because of these abominations, the Lord have driven them out from before thee. So now we're seeing. Because they did these things, the Lord sent his people in here to kill them, and the Lord doesn't like them doing these things. So let's take another look at what these things actually are. Let's look at Deuteronomy 18:9 in the Bible Hub, which I really like better because I can get in and learn exactly what they're talking about. Deuteronomy 18:9. Let's just go to the King James Version, bless God. When you come into this land, thou shalt not do after the abominations of those nations. He that uses divination, what does that mean? Verse 10, the person that uses divination. Let's look at what the word is. He doesn't like the people that use quosim. Well, what is quosim? It's divination. Divine decision. He doesn't like people that use divination. He doesn't like people that use oracles. He doesn't like people that use, what's the root of the word? That people that make their own divine decisions. That's what he doesn't like. He wants to make all of your divine decisions. He doesn't want you making any divine decisions. And if you're okay with that, then you really are wasting your time here. If you're not okay with that, then there might be something of use and value for you here. So what he's saying is, I don't like those people that want to make their own divine decisions. I don't like those people that want to make their own divine decisions. I only want the people that are going to let me make all their decisions for them. What verse was I at? 18:9. Doesn't like those people that make their own divine decisions. Quosim. Okay, what else doesn't he like? He doesn't like a witch. What's a witch? A sorcerer. One that uses sorcery. It's from the word keshaf. Sorceries. What does that mean? Witchcraft. Magic. Doesn't like people that use magic. What is magic really? Is magic really nothing more than the direction of your own intention to whisper a spell, to enchant or practice magic? He doesn't like people whispering affirmations. He doesn't like people practicing directed intention. Why? Because he wants to be the only one. Doesn't want someone who's an enchanter. Divination, to practice divination, to observe signs, to interpret omens. The Lord doesn't want people to do these things because he wants to be the be-all, end-all, or an observer of times. What is that? A person that observes times, is a soothsayer, a sorcerer, someone that looks at and interprets acts of nature, or someone, really what it boils down to is, or a wizard. What's a wizard? Let's find out what a wizard is. A spiritist that talks to the dead. A conjurer, speaking to a ghost. One that talks to familiar spirits. Mediums, one that talks with the dead. Or a consulter. What's a consulter? A person that gives advice. We don't want you going to someone and asking and inquiring. We want you to go just to the Lord. Or a spell, one that does a spell. What is spelling? Isn't that just using your own words and language? One who casts up the dead. one who talks to the dead. Well, Christ talked to the dead. Or a necromancer, a person that calls up the dead. So the Lord didn't want you doing any of those things. And he killed the people that were there before because they were doing those things. Sounds to me like the Lord doesn't want any competition. He doesn't want you thinking for yourself. He doesn't want you spiritually fending for yourself. He doesn't want you moving out on your own spiritual intuition and your own spiritual power and your own intent. And if you don't think you should do that, then you shouldn't be here listening to me, because God's going to get you. And that's just the first verse. But this does give us some idea of the import and the weightiness of what it is we're doing. I mean, if you are using, tarot cards, you are using divination. And the Lord does not like you to use divination. And the Lord is the God of this world right now. So when you're using tarot cards, you are thumbing your nose at Yahweh, Jehovah, the Lord. And I hope he knows it. I know he knows it. I'm here to I'm in the nose thumbing business. And cousin, business is a booming. I'm here to bring the Lord down. Bring him down to Chinatown, and I'm going to do it. We are doing it. When you use divining rods, I only got one because I was using this as a pattern. You are doing something the Lord doesn't want you to do. Why? Because it gives you answers. Why? Because it gives you insight. Why? Because it leads you away from just believing and accepting everything that he and his people tell you to do. Divination scares the Lord because divination breeds independence. And the Lord is trying to breed dependence, not independence. So that's just verse number 1. And I don't know if we'll go through every one of them. And I love this one. Leviticus 19:26. Don't eat any blood. Let me do that. The Lord wants all the blood, but he says you can't have any of it. How interesting is that? Don't use enchantment. Don't observe times. Right by important stuff like don't round the corners of your head or of your beard. That's really important stuff. Leviticus 19:26. Let's take a quick little gander. Leviticus 19:26. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. Leviticus 19:26. Now remember what I told you. These are added by translators when it's italics. You shall not eat the blood. 26. Because that's his blood. And he wants all the blood for himself. So he doesn't want you taking any of it. Why? Because the life is in the blood. The power is in the blood. The essence is in the blood. You don't get the blood. I get the blood. What does that mean? You shall not eat. But now he tells you to eat Jesus' blood. I can't figure him out. Don't practice divination. Again, infinitive construct. Oh, don't practice divination. Don't try to figure things out for yourself. Don't observe. Don't soothsay. Don't try to use your own intention. Don't use enchantment to practice divination. We know what these words are now. They're just the same words over and over. And he killed the people that were doing it. And he doesn't want you to do it. Why then do they make you simulate blood ingestion in communion? Perfect question, L. Alexander. Because they're trying to make you part of the bloodsuckers now. They're trying to make you a vampire. Regard not them that have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards. Idolatry, witchcraft. Let's look at Galatians 5:20. Galatians 5:20. Let me look at it in the King James first, bless God. Anybody that does idolatry, witchcraft, and look at the things they've got it mixed in with. We got adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry. Then we got witchcraft thrown in there. Hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions. I mean, look at the stuff they categorize it with. The people you know that have affinity for witchcraft, are they any of these other things? No, they're not. But they want you to believe they are, because why? They don't want you practicing, directing your own intention. Sorcery is what it is, not witchcraft. Magic, sorcery, enchantment. Magic, sorcery, enchantment. And it's actually pneumatica. It's talking about pharmakia, use of medicine, drugs, or spells. So they don't even want you taking aspirin. And the hardcore Christian people are that way. So I think it's pretty obvious, even from this little bit of survey that we're doing, that he doesn't want you. And here's a classic example right here. Acts 19:19. Let's look at this. And this is the sickness and the sadness of the Christian world today. Acts 19:19. They brought together their books and burned them before all. And they counted the price of them, and it was 50,000 pieces of silver. That's a lot of money. And Paul had all these people that were using curious arts. What does he mean by curious arts? 19:19. That's 10:10. Magic arts. What are magic arts? Tarot, palmistry, divining rods, scrying, all things that a lot of you do. Paul says not to do it. The Lord says not to do it. And yet in Revelation 12, and don't worry, I'm not going to talk about the Revelation 12 idiocracy that's sweeping the nation right now. I want to show you something here about the Christ. You know what the Lord thinks about divination? You know what the Lord thinks about magic? You know what the Lord thinks about magic? You know what Paul thinks about magic. What does the Christ think about magic? Well, if we look in Revelation 12:1-2, which does not mean the rapture is going to happen. It's a lie. It's stupidity. She brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron. Well, let's look at that in verse number 5. And even sometimes your interpreters are deceitful with you, because he was to rule the nations with what? A rod. What is a rod? A rod, a staff, a walking stick, a twig. A wand. See how far down you got to really get to the very... Look what this says. From the base word, rapizo, which means a wand. Rapizo. It means a wand. And you got to go way down here to get to where you see the truth. Look at how far down you had to go to get to the actual origin of the word. Because they don't want you to know that it's a wand. So the Christ says that he's going to rule the nations with a wand of iron. What does that mean, of iron? Doesn't mean it's made of iron. What's it mean? It means it's strong. It's powerful. So he's ruling the nations with an iron strong wand. Folks, that's what you call magic. That's what you call directed intention. That's what you call divination. So it's important for you to understand that when you are engaging in divination, when you're engaging in the tarot, and I'm not even sharing this with you, am I? Doggone it, I forget. Sorry about that. I wasn't even showing you those words. I can't go back to it again. I was showing you, but I wasn't showing you. When we are engaged in these practices, we have to understand that we are engaged in stuff that the Lord hates. And if you want to be part of the Jesus Christian worship, you ought not to do any of those things. You ought not to do any of those things. You really ought not to do any of those things, because they don't like it, and you're going to get yourself into trouble with the Lord if you're doing it. But if you want to become into full spiritual enlightenment, I would encourage you to learn some divination tools. I would encourage you to take a look at some of these ideas of directing your intention, directing your power, learning how to create your intention and shape it and form it and use it in a positive way. I thought Doc Illusion was holding too much cord in there. That's why I put him in timeout. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but there you go. So you have to understand what you're doing. You're doing something that the Lord doesn't like. If you want to be part of the Jesus worshipers and Christianity, you ought to not be doing that stuff. And understand that when you are practicing tarot, when you are practicing, when you are reading tarot, when you are using divining rods, when you are doing palmistry, even when you're doing things like Reiki and things of that nature, or healing arts, you are doing things that the Lord doesn't like. So you're doing something that's weighty. And why doesn't the Lord like it? Because it's powerful. Why doesn't the Lord like it? Because it empowers people. Why doesn't the Lord like it? Because it causes people to become independently minded. Why doesn't the Lord like it? Because it causes people to learn the power of their own intention, learn that they don't need to run to Pope, pastor, priest, spirit guide. It lets people know that they can do much great spiritual work on their own. And that's why the Lord doesn't like it. That's why he killed all the people that did it, because he didn't want those people to find out who he was, and he only wanted people that would bow down to him. That's why I get so much pressure and persecution and ignoration, if that was a word, because I teach people to think for themselves. I teach people to use their own power. I teach people to use their own intention. I teach people they don't need a guru. They don't need a pastor. They don't need a priest. They don't need a card reader. They don't need anybody but themselves. And I try to get people to empower themselves. That's why the Lord doesn't like me. And that's why I don't like the Lord. We have a mutual hatred for one another. And that's okay with me. And that's okay that there's a lot of people that don't like me either. Couldn't not care less. If everybody liked me, I would know I was wrong. I would know that I was doing something wrong. I know I wasn't doing anything of any value. And somebody's knocking on my door. Give me 1 second. Yes, ma'am. Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it. You too. Well, that's unprofessional, but what was I going to do? Someone knocking on my door, somebody ringing my bell. Do me a favor, open the door and let them in. I wonder what I got. Let's see. Wouldn't it be funny if it was something about divination? What did I get? What did the nice lady bring me? She brought me the tarot and the journey of the hero. How funny is that? We're talking about divination, and I get a book about the tarot. Very interesting. But what I'm trying to share with you is this, that I encourage you to use divination. I encourage you to find something that teaches you how to measure, gather, and direct your own personal power of intention. I encourage that. But I also encourage you to remember the weightiness of that which you are practicing. When you enter into the realm of divination, you put yourself at odds with the God of this world. And in some ways, you set yourself up as a target. Just ask Heidi Vandenberg. People will call you names. People will say bad things about you. People will question your integrity. People will question your sanity. People will see you having problems and think that it's good and that you deserve it, all because you take part in divination. It is a weighty thing to understand, and it is something you should understand, that it is weighty, this path that you are partaking. So when you decide to use divination to help develop and focus your own power of intention, know that you're going to run into some opposition by those that don't understand and those that want to come against you. Also understand that tarot cards, divining rods, palm reading, those are not parlor tricks. Those are not things to do flippantly. Those are not things to do as a joke. Those are not things to do as a laugh. Ouija board, scrying, crystal ball, mirror scrying, tarot, divining rods, fortune telling, palmistry. Those are not things to do on a whim. Those are not things to do just on a lark. Those are things that you need to understand what you're doing. And you need to give them the proper respect. They're not games, they're not jokes, they're not parlor tricks. And it is my suspicion that those that use the divination in a silly, pell-mell, parlor trick type of a usage may get some energetic blowback from doing so. Just my suspicion. And you have to remember, these are not for fortune telling. The tarot, the rods are not for fortune telling. Some of you give me grief because I won't answer all the questions you ask, because any form of divination is meant to be confirmatory, not to ask questions of and decide what you're going to do. You ought to have a firm idea in your mind. You should have been thinking about it. You should have a real, and if your analytical mind was dialed up, you wouldn't need this stuff. So if you want to have some personal time with me and get your analytical mind dialed up, you wouldn't need any of this, because you would know in a heartbeat, and you can just use this for other people. But where was I going with this? Where was I going with this? What was I talking about? Doggone it. I lost my train of thought. Oh, you shouldn't be using a tarot card to decide what you want to do. You shouldn't be using a astrological reading to decide what you want to do. You shouldn't be using the divining rods to decide what you want to do. You should be using those things as tools of confirmation for what you already have felt in your intention. Being a person that runs to the tarot to get their answers is no better than a person that runs to a pope or a priest or a pastor or a minister or any other human being or any other spirit guide. You're no better than that if you're running to these cards or to these rods for your answers. They should be confirmatory. That's why you notice that sometimes I'll say, I won't answer that question because I'm trying to realize if someone's just using it as a shortcut or if they thought about it. And sometimes the questions just aren't appropriate, I don't think, for a tool of divination. It should be more meditative thought and counsel and actual deep thought and meditative time. So don't take this lightly. Don't use it as a parlor game. Don't use them to decide, oh, let me pull a card. Should I wear a blue shirt today? Oh, it's blue. So yes, I should wear a blue shirt today. Oh, should I go out with Johnny or Susie? Oh, it's a girl, so I should go out with Susie. Don't be that way. Don't be that way. Don't be that way. First of all, realize that the Lord does not like divination, and he doesn't like divination because it creates and breeds and empowers independence. That's why he doesn't like it. That's why you should like it. That's why I encourage you to pick up some form of divination, to learn how to gin up, for lack of a better word, guide and direct your personal intention, and to piss off the Lord and show your independence. Don't use it frivolously, or you may get some energetic blowback. Don't use them to make decisions. Use them to confirm decisions. And be careful when you're doing it for other people that they don't start getting dependent upon you or upon the divination tool. Now, I'm sure we've got some good questions in the chat room. Let's go in there because we're talking about divination. This is the gospel truth about divination. How about that? How about that? All right. Got to get ready for Jeff's next show. Ha ha ha. Sheeples, peoples. What is that with the flashing in my thing there? Jeff has extra charged up energy today. Maybe because I was working with those divining rods, right? Sometimes the less you sleep, the more energy you have. Absolutely. Why do they make you simulate blood ingestion and communion? Good question. To make a fool out of us. I agree with Jessica. Jeff, seen your stream this morning. Did you see Rex's today on the Illuminati Tarot? No, I did not. Tarot cards. Jesus saves folks for dinner. Yes, he does. Is that flashing for you too? Or is it just it's only flashing on my Macintosh screen, not on my YouTube, on my PC screen? That's weird. Does anybody see that my picture flashing? Interesting question about Gandalf. What about pendulums versus rods? I have pendulums. I've got one right here somewhere. I like the rods better, although the pendulums work just fine. I'm not sure why, but I just prefer to do the rods, and I don't know why. I did have pendulums right here. I don't know what I did with them, but I prefer the rods better myself. I think they're easier. I think it's more, it's easier for me to see. I don't understand. They are just tools, but many people do like the pendulums, and I like the pendulums. They work just fine. I read Jesus and the Christ, and the confusion from the emails dissipated. Jessica, you read my book, Jesus and the Christ? Perfect. I'm glad to hear you say that because I was hoping that book would do that. Jehovah's Witnesses? I'm not sure what the context of that one is. Yeah, it was something cool for me to use. It was that book. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. Ha, ha, ha. That's funny. Mormons? I'm not sure what that's all about. I'm confused why I'm in timeout. I just thought you were getting a little more, holding a little too much court, kind of like teaching your own lesson in there. And just felt like it was time to maybe slow your roll a little bit. Nothing personal. Joseph Smith did receive revelations while scrying stones in a hat. Chris Monet talking about rods, tarot, and divination. I'm not flashing you good. Sorry, I missed a whole one. Okay, here we go. Tarot and astrology are cosmic mirrors, not fortune-telling devices. I agree. What if you know the answer and the divination tool comes up with something out in left field? Well, then you have to be powerful enough and sure enough of your own intention to know which is right. And if you had your analytical mind tuned up, you wouldn't have to worry about that. There's also tea leaves. I tried using tea leaves. It doesn't work for me. Palm reading. Yes, I love palm reading. It can sometimes feel like a curse, but it's really a blessing. It's really a blessing. By the way, do I have a tracking number on my rods? No. It's taking me a little bit longer to make those rods than I thought. So the process is a little slow, but I am making them. In fact, I'll go grab one of the pairs I made today and give you a preview. Making these things is a little bit more difficult than I thought that it was. So it's taken me a little bit longer than I anticipated. I do apologize for that. But I mean, these are handcrafted items. And, you know, sometimes you have to wait a little bit when you're doing a handcrafted item. And these are the rods that I've made. And they're a little bit heavier than the ones that you see me use. And the reason I selected a heavier gauge wire for the divining part is because I wanted it not to give you fake positives. These are going to be a very good, strong, honest read. So, I mean, it's not going to be something where you're getting fake positives. So if you can say, is Jeff wearing a red shirt? Boop, nope, he's not wearing a red shirt. Is Jeff wearing a blue shirt? Yes, he is wearing a blue shirt, but they're not going to be running all over the place. They're not going to be giving you false positives. It's a good, strong, solid read. I mean, look at that. They're dead solid at neutral. Are these some good, solid reading rods? Yeah, you bet your sweet bippy they are. And it's just not as easy as I thought it was, but they're handsome. They're handcrafted. And, you know, it's not just making a rod. Then you got to tune it up. You got to make sure it's nice and straight. You got to make sure the angle's right. You got to make sure it slides well within the handle. And you got to make sure they're tuned up spiritually. So there you go. That's the rods that I'm making, and we're going to get those orders fulfilled ASAP. But it is a little bit more of a job than I thought it was. So I hope that you'll bear with me. So that's the answer on that. So I just wanted to bring this out so you would understand why the Lord is against divination, why you should practice divination, and why you shouldn't use it as a game. Why you shouldn't use it as a game. No need to apologize, Doc. Why you shouldn't use it as a game. And my fear is that it is becoming a bit of a parlor trick and a bit of a game. So that's why I wanted to talk about this. I think Tom Moo has a client. I think I got a text from her that says she has a client. Leak Project is always awesome. Lee Veltman, saw you over on the Leak Project. Glad to have you here. You order, just go to my website, jeffreydaugherty.com, and click on the store, and you can go right down here, I believe, in the Jeff's Books and T-shirts in that box below. You can click right there and also go to it. You're the first person I've heard say sweet bippy in years. Yeah. That's something my dad has said. So there you go. I was thinking the same about the rods becoming too much like a party. Yeah. Do the rods have a sense of humor? Yeah, they do, but they don't like to be trifled with. Like none of us like to be trifled with. So does anybody have any other questions about divination, or any other questions on this subject? We're here. Glad to answer. Glad to share with you. So that's it about divination. A lot of people have some condemnation because the Lord is so against divination. Well, he's against divination for a reason, because it breeds independence, and he doesn't want you independent. He wants you dependent upon him. That's the way it goes. I was going to get a something to do with my initials on them. I don't know if I'll do that or not. I think it probably will, Niz. That's my feeling, yeah. Absolutely. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Heidi and Jenny on this channel. I like the Rider-Waite deck. I did see another deck that's like a modern Rider-Waite. I may give it a try, but I like the Rider-Waite because I like how it was constructed, why it was constructed. So, yeah, I like the Rider-Waite best. It's okay to contact dead loved ones. Well, I think most of the time, if you're contacting people and they say you're dead loved ones, mostly they're not. I mean, you have to hope that your dead loved ones have moved on. But if your dead loved ones are stuck, then yes, I would contact them. Heidi's tomorrow night. Heidi and Jenny are tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I do like runes. I do use runes. Not as much as I use some others, although someone is making me a rune set. I'm going to look forward to using those. Oh, not Zemu's in the house now. There's some controversy whether he spelled it X-E-M-U or X-E-N-U. No, Heidi and Jeff are not tonight. Heidi and Jeff are tomorrow night at 9 p.m. And Jenny Moonstone as well. So it's going to be a party for sure. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m. If you didn't check out the story with Rocky, the show with Rocky, you want to check that out. That was last night. I think it's important about the intention of the creators of the tools. Well, being a creator of the tools, I can see what big difference that it does make. I mean, the ones you buy off of eBay or whatever, they're probably just, slung together because, they're just trying to make a buck. When I'm doing it, there is a lot of intention going into it. And I would think that they will work much better for you because they are really infused with a lot of positive intent. I feel so connected with runes. I can imagine. How do you know when you go to the astral if they're real people or not? Stacy, I'm not trying to be flippant, but you just have to know. You just have to know. And experience is the only teacher that really will work and be true. So you just have to know, and you just have to have done it enough. You have to be conversant enough. That's why I constantly discourage people on doing anything in the astral. And let's be honest, most people have no business in the astral because you shouldn't be in the astral until you've got control of this life here. Now, people don't want to hear that. People want to go up there and escape and have fun, but the astral is no place for a person that hasn't achieved some mastery over their life here. That's why you need to have your analytical mind dialed in. That's why you really do need to have personal services with me on a donation basis and get your analytical mind dialed up so there's no gaps, so your reactive mind is not jumping up and taking over. You just need to do it. And that will equip you to go into the astral realm. But most people should not go into the astral realm, and you certainly don't want to do it unless you've mastered your life here. as Chris Monet is saying, the astral can be dangerous. And I agree. Don't do it. If you're wondering if you should do it, don't. You've got to be a spiritual badass before you go into the astral realm. That's my opinion. There is a process, but most people want microwave spirituality. They want to put it in for 2 minutes on high and be ready to raid soul farms. Doesn't work that way. Because you got to remember, when you get up there, you can get yourself into trouble. Absolutely. Any other questions for me? I can't believe we've been on here 46 minutes. Your gut and intuition will tell you, and listen, agree, Jeff, I'm all set with the astral realm. Good for you, Denise. Good for you. We do have the Team Sophia t-shirts new in the bookstore. We do have the Soylent Jesus t-shirt, Soylent Jesus' People. Oh, I'm glad you like the lion. We do have the new books. There's like 14 books. Zemu approves this message. Oh, that's funny. And we do have the personal services available to you on a donation basis. Excellent. Any other questions for me? Going once? Going twice? So just to wrap up, the Lord hates divination because divination encourages independence. He wants you to be dependent. But understand, when you embark on divination, yes, I'll have some more tonight. When you embark on divination, you are going to be going against the Lord. And when you do embark on divination, it's going to help you. Yes, there will be some more tonight. And when you embark on divination, you are going to help you learn and direct and control your intention. Don't turn it into a parlor game, and don't use it for making decisions. Use it for confirming decisions. Don't be flippant about it, or you might get some energetic blowback. I'm just saying. So that is the gospel truth about divination. And that's some great chat, some great questions, some great answers. And we will be back later on tonight with some more information for you. I'm going to go make another couple sets of divining rods because we do have a lot of people waiting on them. And I apologize that I thought I could make a set in 15 minutes. Not so much. So it's just going to take a little while. But it is great, handcrafted. I mean, literally, I've got the rolls of copper and the rolls of copper wire. And I mean, I actually have to cut these, this is pipe, and I have to cut it. And then this is on a big spool, and I have to unspool it and straighten it and cut it and measure it. And then you got to make sure that these fit in, and you got to make sure they spin really good. And you got to make sure that it's tuned up, make sure it's straight. Make sure that it works. You got to burr down, rub all the burrs off the edges of everything. So it is a process, and you want to make sure that they work and make sure that they're tuned up. So there's a lot that goes into it. And if you'd like to get some of those, they're on the website. If you'd like to have personal services with me, it's in the box below. I salute those of you that are here. It's proof positive you're seeking after truth. And as you go your way, remember that you don't have original sin within. You've got the spark of divinity within. That's why the Christ said to love yourself. And he said to love your neighbor as yourself, because guess what? Your neighbor also has a spark of divinity in them too. So don't look for the differences. Look for the similarities. Be excellent to yourself. Be excellent to your neighbor. And what does that mean? That means that we are all excellent to each other. And that's the way it's supposed to be. The Christ said that by this people will know that you are my followers, because you are excellent to each other. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty. We'll see you again real soon.